Hello and welcome back to another episode of Homebrew EDH, where I take you through my personal commander decks, how they work, and how they win. This episode is Eladamri, Lord of Leaves. It's 2 green for a 2/2 elf legend that says all elves gain Forest Walk and elves have Shroud. Yes, that does apply to all elves, not just yours, and including himself. This is an elf tribal deck, if you didn't already know, that is near and dear to my heart. I did think about taking it apart for quite some time yesterday and decided not to because I want to make this video, and honestly it just is cool. I mean, it's an okay deck. It's pretty good. It's not great, but it's not terrible, unless of course you draw into nothing and then you're just kind of screwed, which happens. You know, not every deck is going to be turn 4, turn 5 wins. So yeah, this deck honestly is just there for the cool factor because, I don't know, I think it's cool. So yeah, again, just elf tribal, all that standard stuff. Without further ado, let's get into the deck. Now, the one thing we are lacking in these colors, at least from the way I built this deck, is removal. We don't have a whole bunch. We do have your kind of standard stuff: Reclamation, Sage, Beast Within, and Nature's Claim, which can deal with artifacts, enchantments, and other permanents that can be a little bit pesky, trying to slow us down and that kind of thing. But what we lack in removal, we make up for in pure card ramp, with cards like Burgeoning, which lets us get a land onto the field every time an opponent plays one. We got Circle of Dreams Druid, which is a Gaia's Cradle on a body. Rampant Growth, which just finds us a basic forest tapped. Draga Tree Speaker, which by itself doesn't do much, but when we level it up enough times, we get all of our elves to tap for 2 green apiece, which can make it super easy to end games. Got Llanowar Tribe, which is 3 green that taps to add 3 green. 3 visits finds us any forest, in this case mostly just basic ones. Priest of Titania is 1 green for a 1/1 elf that taps to add a green for each elf on the battlefield. So if you have 2 elf decks in a pod, this gets kind of nightmarish really fast. Next up is Heritage Druid. It's a 1 mana 1/1 that says tap 3 untapped elves you control, add 3 green to your mana pool. So if you have a bunch of elf tokens out from various sources within this deck, you can tap those for more mana. Similarly, Greenweaver Druid, 3 mana 1/1, taps to add 2. Skyshroud Claim finds us 2 forests untapped, which is pretty cool. Fintorn Elder is 3 mana for a 1/1 that taps for 2. Elvish Mystic, 1 mana, taps for 1. Cultivate finds us 2, 1 now and 1 for later. And my favorite is a Wirewood Channeler. I'll move it up a little bit so you guys can see. This is the foil version, so that's pretty cool. It's 3 and a green for a 2/2 that taps to add X mana of any one color to your mana pool, where X is the number of elves in play. Which, again, if you have 2 elf decks, gets really nutty really fast. The second half of this will be Protection and Tutors, with cards like Veil of Summer, which draws us a card if an opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn, and then gives our spells and us and permanents we control hexproof from blue and black until end of turn. We have Tarjuru Preserver, which is an elf shaman for 2 mana that says spells and abilities your opponent's control can't cause you to sacrifice permanents, which I think is really cool. Kind of a niche ability, but in the pods that I tend to play in, there's a lot of sacrifice nonsense. Next up is Gaia's Herald, which is 1 and a green for a 1/1. Creature spells can't be countered by spells or abilities. Yes, this applies to everybody, but we're generally more creature heavy than most decks. We do also run cards like Heroic Intervention, which gives our permanents indestructible and hexproof till end of turn. Galadrim Ambush is 3 and a green for an instant. It says create X 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens, where X is the number of attacking creatures, and then fog for everything except for elf creatures. And we also have Wrap in Vigor, which is basically a one-time anti-destroy kind of cloak, I guess. Think of it kind of like shield counters, I guess, but just more of a one-time thing. And if it gets countered, then nothing happens, and we kind of lose the board from there. But all in all, just a little bit of protection in this deck. Again, kind of a weird mix of cards because it's harder to come by that kind of stuff in the mono-green aspect of deck building. And the last section before we get to how to win the game is finding the ways to win the game with tutors like Natural Order. 2 green for a sorcery, sacrifice a green creature, find any green creature card in our deck, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. We also have Chord of Calling, which is similar, but we don't have to sacrifice. We can just pay mana or tap creatures to pay mana for it. Find any creature card with CMC X or less. Put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. Worldly Tutor finds us any creature to the top of our library. Sylvan Scrying finds us any land in our deck into our hand. Crop Rotation finds us any land in our deck for the cost of sacrificing a land to the battlefield, though. And Fierce Empath finds us a creature with CMC 6 or greater, of which there's only one in this deck because one is honestly all we need, because that answer is Craterhoof Behemoth. That's basically how we're winning this game, is Craterhoof with enough elves out. I also packed a Finale of Devastation just in case our other tutors don't go as planned. We can just Finale for 10 or more if you really want to pump big numbers into it. We can search library and or graveyard for that Craterhoof, pump it out onto the field, and we get the buffs from 10 or more with the +X/+X and haste until end of turn, which could also ultimately just end the game on the spot. I've only ever won once with this deck, but I've only ever played it twice. So yeah, the other special part of this deck is the way that the mana base is built. It's actually very simple. It's 31 forests and 6 utility lands, but every forest in the deck is a beta edition forest, which I think is honestly really cool. So yeah, I got a whole freaking bunch of those. I bought them off of Card Kingdom. They had exactly 31 of them. I said, screw it, I'm gonna do it. They're like $18 a piece. And there we go. I don't know. Again, it's just a cool factor. I just really like how the old Borderlands look. I'm a huge fan of that versus the more modern stuff. Love old cards and all that fun stuff. So the other lands, just by the way, are Wirewood Lodge, which is just a regular land. It either taps for a colorless or you can pay a green, tap it to untap target elf, which with the amount of elves that tap for mana in this deck can be pretty good. Standard tribal lands like Cavern of Souls, obviously naming elves, so we can tap it for green and have uncounterable elves. We do also run Yavimaya for the Forest Walk. We have Obaseju, mostly for the utility with the channel ability. Also running Nykthos, because Devotion in a mono-green deck is pretty easy to do, and also my favorite card in the entire deck is my Guy's Cradle. Taps for a green for each creature that we control, which, I mean, if we land this on turn maybe 4 or 5 without any unfortunate, unforeseen board wipes coming through, can tap for a crap ton of mana. Alright, and with that, today's episode does come to a close. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed, go ahead and leave a like. Consider subscribing, it does help grow the channel. As always, the deck list will be in the description with all the cards I did not include in this video. And until I see you guys in the next one, take care, and have a good one.